let's start by talking about Marvel. Yep, Marvel. There was recently The Marvels was released, and we've spoken about it before that Disney has done a bit of a forced culture change, and so we've noticed this with a lot of the movies. We've actually spoken about a lot of them over this year, that a lot of them are bombed and everything like that. So Yash, can I get you to chuck that up onto screen for us? Thanks, Yash. Awesome. So the Marvels movie that was just recently released, let's say bombed is probably a bit of an understatement. Well, actually, I don't know. It says its box openings were 47 million. I don't know. 47 million isn't nothing to sneeze at. However, if you look at the fact that they spent $300 million on producing and marketing the movie, 47 million is a little bit tough. Now, you probably think, yeah, but over the time they'll make their money back and everything like that. Yeah, yes, they will. Yeah, maybe they will. But if we put comparison, Endgame, which was the last, let's be honest, the last decent Marvel movie that was released, Endgame had a $650 million box office weekend. 650 compared to 47. There's a big change there. Now, there's a bit, and as always, links to all of the articles that we're referring to are down below in the description. And this was a report from Deadline, but it was the video that I caught up on. This was from Tim Pool from Timcast IRL podcast, and he was just commenting on it. And he was commenting of what we all know about this rapid, forced shift in culture. They're trying to shove this culture change. Disney as a whole are trying to shove this culture change down our throats. They're trying, they're changing casts out to more diversity and changing storylines to including homosexuality and all this sort of stuff. Like they're doing all of this crazy stuff to force this culture change down our throats. And it doesn't seem to be working. Or is it, Dr. Rod? What do you think about... Now, I know, look, if we're trying to change culture, it takes time to change culture, right? Culture change happens over time. This sudden force, it's obviously pretty hard to figure whether it's actually working yet, because it's going to be generations to see whether it's actually working. But what's your take on this rapid, this almost an instant shift in culture that's happened, with Disney?
Well, I mean, it does look as if they are trying to force a cultural shift, and they seem to want to do it very, very quickly. And that probably is why they're not doing so well in recent times, because people are not ready for that shift. And of course, there's a lot of pushback now. Yes. Particularly in the United States, and we're going to talk later on about what's going on in the political areas. And I think there is a lot of pushback, because the truth is most of us are reasonably conservative. Yeah. Most of us have the attitude, what you do in your own home, like in the privacy of your own home, away from the public glare, that's your business. But don't shove your business down my throat. Yeah. And so I think we're seeing a bit of that. And look, frankly, I haven't seen a Marvel movie for years and years and years. I don't have any interest in it anymore. But I just think people would rather all of this stuff be kept behind closed doors, as it were. Yeah. They don't want to see it. And my wife and I, a couple of years ago, we just stopped subscribing to some of the streaming services, because so much of what they were making available just really didn't align with our own worldview, our own ways of thinking. And so we did what many others have done. We just said, well, we're just not going to spend our money on this kind of thing for the few good movies that are available, which we can probably get elsewhere anyway. Yeah. I think one of the things we're seeing with Disney is they're not satisfied with reflecting the culture. I think
Yes.
they've made a decision at corporate level that they want to change culture.
Yep.
They're a very large organization with deep pockets. They can afford a whole series of flops, which really is what they've experienced, and they don't have to change their approach.
Mm.
So I think we'll probably see Disney continue down this path, probably until they get a new CEO. And I know that they've just brought back a former CEO, but I think they'll have to have a major clean out of most of their executives as well. They'll probably have to get rid of a lot of their stars, not sign them up, and make a shift back. But they won't have to do that in a hurry. But I think Tim Pool's right. They are not going to be able to force cultural change overnight, because even Disney isn't big enough to do that.
So obviously this forced culture change is an issue because they're trying to change the culture to something that we don't agree with. What if the story was flipped and it was a Christian organization trying to rapidly force Christian values and Christian culture onto other people?
Oh, look, that won't work either. I don't think it will, because people are saying, well, we don't want your values either.
Yep.
A lot of people who are reasonably conservative, they're not religious people.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say they've inherited a religious worldview without a relationship with God in it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they would take to having a religious movies and that kind of thing in a big way. Having said that, Christian movies are gaining in popularity.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, and I think people are beginning to realise, for example, the Conservative is not a Christian organisation, but it's a conservative organisation. The Daily Wire is beginning to experience considerable success.
Mm-hmm.
So not only are they majorly, commentating on current affairs, but they've got Jeremy's razors,
Yes.
Jeremy's chocolate with and without nuts. They've launched a number of other product lines which seem to be doing reasonably well.
Yep.
So they're saying, look, don't spend your money with woke companies. We're not woke. Come and spend your money. I've actually bought their chocolate. Chocolate.
What did you think of it?
It was fine. It was good. It was just chocolate, but I like the wrapper and I like the idea. I actually found it, believe it or not, at an airport in Canada. I was at Vancouver Airport. Wow. It was in a shop there. So I bought some for me and I bought some for a friend of mine as well. But the other thing that they've launched very recently is Bent Key, which is children's television. Unfortunately, we can't get it here in Australia, but in the United States, you can download the app. And they're producing a lot of what looks to me to be pretty good material for young children. And so, I wish them success. And it can happen in America because of the overall size of the population. Well, they've also released a few movies as well, which have been quite successful.
So I want to go back to this idea of forcing change, like forcing culture change, in the fact that it's happened almost instantly that they've tried to change the culture and force it. It was just like almost one movie, bang. Like now everyone's either it's a diversity quota or it's, or it's LGBTQ or whatever, right. So it's just now, what if forcing culture change is not successful? Well, because what I believe is one of the biggest issues, and there was actually another topic that came up this week that I thought would chuck in here, but it doesn't, it fits on trend of what we're talking about, but we've got plenty to talk about today. But about having your audience, a particular audience, like, so for example, Disney is kids, families, or if we're talking about the Marvel universe, we're looking at fans that have been fans of Marvel for usually years, if not since their childhood and everything like that. And you mentioned about the Daily Wire producing stuff and doing stuff that is a different culture, but it's not like they've got a captive audience and then they're forcing those people to now consume another thing. They're just going, well, we're producing an alternative, and people who are interested in that are then attracted to it, and then hopefully that influences. It's a big difference from having a captive audience of a particular type of people, and then now telling them this is what you're going to watch and this is how we're going to change it. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of backlash, but let me say it this way. Let me shift it, because obviously we're talking about Marvel and a big multi-billion-dollar company or whatever. Let's bring it back to a local leader, right? Of a local ministry or a business, or they may be in politics or whatever. Let's bring it back to like everyday leaders that will be watching this, because I doubt the CEO of Disney will be watching our podcast. If they are, hi, reach out, love a chat. If we're not happy in an organization with the culture, obviously a temptation of leaders is going, I've got to change this right now. I've got to go smack bang and try to force change everything. We're seeing in a large scale, that's not the way to do things. How do we do it?
Well, you do it reasonably slowly. And you would be familiar with the freeze, unfreeze, refreeze model of cultural change within an organization.
I have, but tell me the details.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
Look,
I don't know the details.
I'm not a great expert on it myself, but I think what we're actually seeing in the media is they just want to refreeze straight away. But the idea is you kind of stop. And so in a sense, you freeze. It's a bit like taking a photograph, a still photograph of your organization where it is. So in a sense, that's a freeze phase. Then you work through all of those things that you want to change in your culture. That's what goes on when you unfreeze. Then you make changes, and they might manifest in things like a change in structure, a change in the fundamental policies and practices of the organization, and then you refreeze. So then you kind of establish the new policies and practices, maybe the new marketing, the new branding, and so on. But you've actually got to go through a process. So in a sense, you stop, you take stock, you implement the changes that are desirable changes, and then you, as it were, freeze the organization again, but in a different mold, as it were. It seems to me that what we're witnessing in the media, and perhaps also in politics, is that really they want to skip those first two stages and go straight to refreeze. And it might have worked temporarily, but I think we're now seeing a backlash. And where people have the choice, so we've all got a choice not to pay a subscription to a streaming service. We've all got a choice not to bother going to see a new movie. We've all got a choice which political party we vote for. And when we can do it in secret, as it were, I think that's when the conservative side comes out. And I think that's the kind of thing we're seeing at the moment. And so within an organization, I think anyone who's had experience as a CEO or a senior manager will know that you can't really impose a new culture. You have to lead your people toward a new culture.
That's really good.
And
Say
that's
that again
one
for us, Dr. Rod.
You can't impose a new culture. You've got to lead your people towards a new culture. That's why you're a leader. Look, forget about being a CEO if you're just a good manager. You've got to be a good leader. In fact, my view is that these days, anyone who's in a formal management position has to have the skills of a leader, mainly because you cannot direct people to do anything these days. The sort of old model that might have applied 100 and 150 years ago was of the boss. And it was the boss, usually a he was the boss because he told everybody what to do. In other words, he took a directive approach.
Yeah.
But these days, particularly as people have much higher levels of education and so on, and we've got a totally different attitude towards people in authority, leaders cajole, persuade, incentivize people to make changes. They negotiate. That's the word I was stretching for. That's what happens.
Yep.
And so just because you've got a management position, just because you've got a label sitting on your office desk or on your door, doesn't actually mean you can achieve anything. Yep. So you've got to apply all of the skills of a leader in order to bring about change. And by the way, when you also may need to shift some of your senior people out of your organisation and bring other people in who whose own values align with the new values that you're trying to establish within your organisation.
There's a couple of there's one thing that I kind of want to give as a bit of an encouragement or maybe a bit of a reminder to leaders is the fact that if you're not happy with the culture and you want it to change, don't force it quickly. Remember to be patient. Remember to be patient. Like, just look long term. I think that's one of the greatest things we can do as a leader is look long term to what we're going to be achieving, not like in the next week, but like the old saying, we overestimate what we can achieve in a week. In short term, but we underestimate what we can achieve long term. And so I think that when we're looking at changing culture, it can be very tempting for us to jump in and try to force that culture change immediately because, well, I've got to change this. I'm the leader. I've got to change this instantly. But as we're seeing with Disney, it's not working. The forced culture change just doesn't work. We must be patient as leaders and take the long game effect. Understand that there will be some sacrifices on both sides over that journey. And so my encouragement to you is be patient. Don't try to force change because remember, there is this principle called change fatigue. Change fatigue, that if you try to change too much, and we all know those chaotic leaders that are constantly coming in and every week they've got a new idea and they're going to change the process and change the way we're going to do this, change the vision of the company and change the direction, change the product, change the marketing campaign, change. Your team will get change fatigue. So we as leaders need to be very, very careful about how we implement change, especially when we're talking about change in culture. Make sure you don't do it abruptly. Make sure you take a long-term planned approach to that. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.